There are truck stops where you roll in, grab coffee, fuel up, and leave. And then there are the other ones. The strange ones, the quiet ones. The places where the night feels too deep, and the clocks on the walls seem to tick without meaning. I found one of those places once, pulled in well past midnight. My eyes blurred from the highway, my body tired in that slow, heavy summer night way. I thought I'd stay 20 minutes, maybe 30, but when I stepped out of my truck and felt the warm, unmoving air against my face, when I saw the way every driver moved, slow, silent, patient, it felt like time itself had laid down to rest. And for some reason, the longer I stayed, the less I wanted to leave. The moment I rolled off the interstate, I knew something about this place was different. The air was warmer here, thicker somehow, not heavy, not suffocating, just still. No wind, no insects, not even the far-off hum of engines on the highway I'd just left. I eased my rig into the lot, my headlights gliding across rows of idling trucks. Except they weren't idling. None of them were. Every rig sat perfectly still, silent as stones, their chrome catching the faint yellow glow of the overhead lamps. Lights from the diner windows didn't flicker, they held steady, as if taped in place. I turned off the engine. The sudden quiet pressed against my ears like warm hands. Even after the fan slowed to a stop, the silence didn't fill with anything. It just stayed. I stepped out of the cab and stretched. My boots met the asphalt, warm from the day, but cooled enough to carry the softness of night. And then I realized something else. Nobody was rushing, not one soul. Every driver I saw moved like they had nowhere to be. One man stood at his trailer door, hands in pockets, looking at nothing. Another leaned against his bumper, nodding to some tune only he could hear. A woman near the fuel pumps tapped ash from a cigarette, so slowly you'd think she was sculpting time itself. They weren't stuck. They weren't tired. They were simply staying. The diner ahead glowed with a soft golden haze, the kind you usually see in old movies, when everything feels safe and warm, and no one minds that the world outside is dark. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing longer than they should have, as if the sound needed extra time to decide where to go. The sign on the door said open, but the clock beside it wasn't moving, hands frozen at 12:17. A minute that would never arrive, or one that would never pass. Inside, the lights hummed quietly, a low, warm hum that felt like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. The air smelled of coffee, pancake syrup, and the dusty sweetness of night. And the people inside moved just like the ones outside, slow, easy, unhurried, as if they all knew what I didn't yet. Time here wasn't broken. It had simply gone to sleep. The bell above the diner door gave a soft ring when I pushed it open, but the sound felt delayed, like it traveled through syrup before reaching my ears. Inside, the air was warm, almost cozy, carrying the smell of fresh coffee and something buttery on the grill. The lights hung low, wrapped in old yellow shades that made everything look like it had been painted in honey. A waitress stood behind the counter, polishing a mug with slow, deliberate movements. She didn't look up when I entered, not out of rudeness, but as if she already knew I was coming, and had known it for a long time. I slid into a booth near the window. The vinyl seat creaked beneath me, as if it recognized my weight. A moment later, the waitress appeared in front of me. She smiled, soft, warm, familiar. Too familiar. "Coffee?" she asked. "Not do you want some? Not how do you take it? Just..." Coffee, like she already knew the answer. I nodded. She poured without asking how I take it. The smell rose instantly. Strong, rich, slightly sweet. Exactly the way I like it. Even though I hadn't told her anything. She placed the mug in front of me, then paused, resting her hand lightly on the table. "You're back earlier than usual," she said. A chill traced the back of my neck. Not cold, not frightening, just strange. "I've never been here before," I said with a small laugh. She smiled again, not surprised, not confused, just patient. "That's what you always say." She turned away before I could answer, and drifted toward the kitchen like she had all the time in the world. A man in a faded ball cap sat 3 booths down. Ford paused halfway to his mouth. He watched me for a moment, with the kind of gaze older drivers carry after too many miles. Tired, knowing, gentle. Then he tipped his head in greeting, as if we'd spoken before. "You're running late tonight," he said. It was my turn to stare. "I don't think we've met." He chuckled softly, like I'd told a joke he'd heard 100 times. Sure. That's what you said last time, too." He stabbed another piece of pie and ate it like nothing strange had happened. A group of drivers sat near the corner booth. 3 men and 1 woman, all talking in quiet voices, their words blending with the hum of the lights and the soft sizzle from the grill. They weren't whispering. They just talked like the night itself could hear them and was listening kindly. As I listened, I began to notice something odd. Their conversation didn't sound new, not fresh, not spontaneous. It sounded practiced, as if each of them already knew what the others were about to say. "Same load as last time," one muttered. "Roads look exactly the same," another added. "Can't remember when I came in," the woman said. Her voice drifted off, and the others nodded like this was normal, expected, routine. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted perfect, too perfect, like the first cup of the morning after a long, peaceful sleep. But I wasn't rested. I hadn't even been tired the moment before. Yet sipping it now made me feel like I'd been drinking this same cup for longer than the night had existed. A strange idea settled in the back of my mind. Maybe I have been here before, but I knew I hadn't. I would have remembered a place like this, right? Outside the window, time still hadn't moved. The same truck sat under the same lights, casting the same shadows. The air was still warm, the kind of warm that never cools, even when the night drifts deep. Something about the place felt wrapped in a blanket. Safe, soft, suspended. When I looked down at my watch, I expected the hands to move. They didn't, still stuck at the same minute. As the clock on the diner door, 12:17, I blinked, checked again, still 12:17. A driver slid into the booth across from me, uninvited but welcome in the strange way people are welcome when the night feels stuck between hours. "You look like you're trying to figure it out," he said. His voice was calm, deep, warm. The kind of voice that could talk you down from a storm or lull a baby to sleep. "Figure what out?" He leaned back in the seat, fingers tapping gently on the table. "How long you've been here?" I let the silence sit between us. He waited, patient as the room itself. "I just arrived," I said finally. "Maybe 15 minutes ago." He shook his head kindly, like someone correcting a child without wanting to embarrass them. "No, friend. Nobody arrives here 15 minutes ago." He nodded toward the window. "Look again." Outside, the lot hadn't changed. The same trucks, the same shadows, the same stillness. But something inside me shifted. A memory? A feeling? A whisper? Something telling me I had been here before, and maybe more than once. I swallowed another sip of coffee, letting the warmth sit on my tongue before sliding down. The taste lingered longer than coffee should. "Where exactly is here?" I asked quietly. The driver smiled, not reassuringly, not ominously, just honestly. "Rest stop," he said, "same as any other." Then he added, softer, "But around here, the nights run a little longer." The driver across from me didn't say anything else for a while. He just sat there, hands folded, watching the window as though the darkness outside were a familiar friend, returning the same gaze. I followed his eyes. Nothing moved. Not a truck. Not the leaves on the low shrubs around the parking lot. Not even the faint shimmer in the air that normally comes with a warm night. Everything was still, perfectly, peacefully still. I'd been in quiet places before. Empty rest stops at 3 in the morning. Remote fuel stations where even the wind didn't bother to show up. But this silence was different. It wasn't absence. It was presence. A kind of quiet that felt intentional, like the night had chosen to pause and wait for something, or maybe wait for me. "Time doesn't run the same here," the driver murmured, as if reading my thoughts. "It slows down once you pull in. Sometimes it stops altogether." I let a small laugh escape. Not mocking, just nervous. "You're saying this place freezes time?" "Not freezes," he corrected gently. "Just lets it rest." His eyes shifted back to mine. "In this lot, night stays as long as you need it to." The words settled deep, warm and heavy like a blanket pulled over the shoulders. I leaned back into the booth, the vinyl cool against my shirt. A soft buzzing filled the space around us. The hum of lights, the faint clatter of dishes in the kitchen, the peaceful drone of voices talking low across the diner. But none of those sounds had any rhythm. They weren't following time. They simply existed, like stones in a river that had stopped flowing. The waitress returned with more coffee, refilling my mug without asking. I watched the stream of dark liquid pour into the cup. It didn't splash, didn't ripple. It filled perfectly, as if gravity itself were slow and cautious here. "Do I know you?" I asked her softly. She smiled, a soft, secret smile. You'd give someone who asked a question they'd already asked 100 times. "You've been here before, sweetheart," she said. "Maybe not today, maybe not last week, but you've been through." She tapped the table lightly. "Most drivers do. Some just forget until time's ready to wake up again." I frowned into my mug. Why don't I remember? The waitress shrugged her soft shoulders. "Most folks don't remember every rest they've ever taken. Doesn't mean they didn't need him." She drifted away with that same slow, drifting motion. No hurry, no urgency, like she had all the time in the world. And maybe she did. A man at a nearby booth lifted his head. Gray beard, weathered face, eyes that held thousands of miles in them. "You ever drive so long," he said slowly, "that your days start to overlap?" I nodded. "Plenty of times." He pointed at me with a fork. "That's what this place is for. To remind you that not every mile has to count. Some miles exist just so you can slow down." He paused, fork hovering in midair. "And this place, well, it's where the miles stop counting altogether." His words should have frightened me, but they didn't. They soothed something in my chest that had been tight for years. The pressure of schedules, the ticking of logs, the endless demands of the road. All of that felt distant now, irrelevant, like it belonged to a different world entirely. Because here, time wasn't advancing. Time was waiting. For me. For them. For anyone who wandered in needing a night longer than the clock allowed. I stepped outside for air, mug still warm in my hands. The lot stretched before me, rows of rigs bathed in gold. their trailers glowing soft under the overhead lamps. Every driver outside moved the same, slow, relaxed, like the weight of the world had slipped from their shoulders. One man leaned on his front bumper, looking up at the sky like he'd been doing it his whole life. He didn't blink when I walked past, just nodded, a greeting from one wanderer of time to another. Down the row, two drivers played cards on an overturned crate, their hands drifting in unhurried arcs. Cards slapped the wood with a soft sound, but the rhythm was inconsistent, like they weren't following beats, just following comfort. Farther still, a young driver sat cross-legged on the asphalt, his head tipped back, eyes closed, breathing in long, deep breaths, as if storing the night inside his lungs. I passed him, and he whispered without opening his eyes, "It's a good place to rest your thoughts, huh?" "Feels like it," I said. He smiled. "Don't worry about the hours. They can wait outside the lot." I walked between the rows of trucks, letting my hand brush against their metal sides. They were warm, warmer than they should have been at this hour, as if they'd held on to the heat of the day, longer than physics would allow. The trailers didn't tick and cool, the way they normally do at night. They just breathed a soft, steady warmth. My boots echoed on the pavement. One step, another, soft thumps folding into the deep stillness. No wind, no insects, nothing but the lights above and the warm, unmoving air. It felt like a dream that had chosen to become real for a while. At the far end of the lot, I found a driver sitting on the edge of his step, hands clasped loosely between his knees. He didn't look up, but his voice carried toward me like he'd been expecting me to walk by. "You're trying to figure it out." Not a question, a statement. I stopped beside him. "Feels like déjà vu," I admitted. "Like I've lived this night before." "You have." He finally looked up, eyes soft as dusk. "We all have." "How?" He tapped his temple gently. "Memory's funny on the road. Sometimes it loops. Sometimes it stretches. Sometimes it drops pieces and picks him up later." He looked around the lot, smiled faintly. "This place, it catches the pieces you drop, holds onto them for a while, lets you rest before you pick yourself up again." I sat down next to him, letting the warm pavement press into my palms. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He chuckled. "That depends who's asking. Driver and me. A few minutes. Man and me." He shrugged. "Feels like forever." He wasn't joking, not bragging, just telling the truth the way the night had whispered it to him. And for the first time since I pulled in, I began to understand. This wasn't a truck stop you found on a map. It was one the road gave you, when you needed time to stop moving, before you forgot who you were. The longer I sat beside that driver at the far end of the lot, the more the quiet wrapped around us like a blanket warmed in the sun. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't empty. It was the kind of stillness you feel right before falling asleep. That soft, floating space, where your breath and the world move in the same rhythm. Above us, the lights hummed in long, gentle waves. Not flickering, not buzzing, just humming. Steady low, like an engine idling peacefully after a hard day's run. He looked out over the rows of silent trucks and let his shoulders relax fully, as if gravity worked differently here. "You ever think," he said slowly, "about how many nights you lose on the road?" "Lose?" I echoed. "Like miss." He shook his head. "No, lose. Nights where you weren't really present, where your body drove, but your mind was still tangled up in schedules, in calls you missed, in places you left too fast or never reached at all." His words sank into me with the weight of truth. I had lived nights like that, gone through hours I never truly held. Truckers do it all the time. Hours eaten by asphalt until morning arrives, and we wonder where the night went. This place, he said gently, collects those hours. I turned to him, but he kept watching the lot, as if the answer was written in the warm glow of headlights and the unmoving shadows. It gives them back to you, he continued, when the road decides you need them. I let that settle. A place where lost time gathered, where the night waited, where the road returned the hours I had spent, rushing past myself. A soft breeze brushed my cheek, the first movement of air. Since I'd arrived, it felt like a sigh from someone unseen, someone relieved. When did you first come here? I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile that carries years, miles, and a little bit of sorrow. When I forgot why I was driving, he paused. Then the road brought me here, like it does for all of us eventually. I looked around the lot again. Every driver I saw, every truck, every shadow, seemed to hold a story. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, just lived ones. People taking a breath, people letting the night stretch out, long enough to remember themselves. A woman leaned out her cab window, calling quietly to the driver beside her. A brief laugh floated between them, warm and slow. They spoke like travelers who had known each other for 10 years, or 10 minutes. Same cadence, same comfort. Inside the diner, the same man in the faded cap still ate the same slice of pie. The waitress still wiped the same mug, but none of it felt eerie anymore. It felt kind, like the world was offering a pause button to those who needed one the most. The driver beside me nudged my shoulder lightly. You feel it yet? I nodded, eyes drifting across the stillness. Yeah, I whispered. It feels safe. He chuckled softly. That's how you know you're supposed to be here tonight. The breeze picked up again, moving the warm air in a slow, gentle wave. It brushed across the lot, carrying the scent of coffee, warm asphalt, and dust. The smell of home for anyone who has ever lived between exit signs. I didn't ask him what time it was. There would have been no point. Time didn't belong here tonight. Instead, I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the warmth, the hum, and the silence drift through me like a slow, calming tide. And in that quiet moment, for the first time and longer than I could remember, I didn't feel the need to keep moving. The road could wait. The world could wait. Tonight, the night itself was waiting with me. Eventually, the breeze that had drifted through the lot grew quieter again, as if even the air wanted to settle back into stillness. The drivers scattered around the parking area softened into silhouettes, figures leaning into their own quiet thoughts, shapes outlined in the golden glow of lamps that never flickered. Something within me shifted, not abruptly, not dramatically, just a soft release, like a knot in my chest loosening after years of being tied too tight. The driver beside me stood slowly. He stretched, bones cracking softly, and brushed invisible dust from his jeans. Night's ready to let you rest, he said. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't walk away quickly. He simply drifted back toward his truck, with the same calm motion everyone here seemed to carry, a movement that had no beginning and no end. I stayed sitting for a while longer, letting the warm pavement press against my palms, letting the silence coat me like a second skin. A moment later, I stood too, and made my way back through the rows of resting rigs, boots thumping softly, each step echoing just slightly too long, as if sound here, too, refused to hurry. When I reached my truck, I paused at the door. The metal felt warm under my fingertips. as if it had held on to the last bit of sunlight, far longer than it should have. I climbed inside slowly. The cab greeted me with that familiar blend of warmth and worn-in comfort. The smell of old leather, the faint sweetness of diesel, the memory of day still trapped in the fabric of the seat. I sat behind the wheel, but didn't touch it, didn't start the engine, didn't even check the clock. There was no need. My watch still read 12:17. So did the diner clock. So did the digital display on my dashboard. Tom was resting, and I was meant to rest with it. I leaned back, letting the seat cradle me, feeling the slight warmth radiating up through the cushions. Outside the windshield, the lot glowed like a lantern floating in the middle of a dark river. A perfect still life, painted in amber. I watched the drivers moving far away, their gestures slow and soft, as if they weren't really crossing distance, just drifting through a dream they'd been in many times before. The breeze returned one last time, sliding through the cracked window, carrying the scent of warm pavement and something faintly sweet. Maybe the diner's pies, maybe the memory of summer nights long gone. I let my eyes close. Inside the darkness behind my eyelids, the hum of distant engines joined together into something that sounded like waves against a shore. Soft, rhythmic, endless. My breathing matched it without effort. Slow in, slow out. The kind of breath your body remembers from childhood. Before clocks, before deadlines, before rest became a luxury. A deep calm began to settle in my limbs, spreading up through my shoulders, loosening tension I didn't even know I carried. Each breath pulled me deeper inward, like slipping beneath warm water. A voice drifted across the CB, too soft to make out the words. It wasn't calling anyone. It wasn't asking anything, just talking the way people do, when they want the night to feel less alone. It blended into the hum of the lot, into the pulse of my heart, into the warmth of the air. The lines between myself and the world stretched thin, not disappearing, just softening, like everything had been wrapped in cotton. The cab felt smaller now, cozier, like the world had folded itself to fit the shape of my body, offering a cradle inside the vast stillness. I lay sideways across the sleeper, head sinking into a pillow that smelled faintly of sunlight and miles. The blanket felt cool at first, then warmed instantly against my skin. Outside, the golden lights blurred into hazy halos. Shadows stretched, softened, settled. Someone laughed gently across the lot. A warm, tired laugh, the kind you hear at the end of long days. It rolled through the quiet like a breeze, then faded. My last thought before drifting was simple, small, and full of peace. Maybe nights like this don't disappear. Maybe they wait for us, until we're ready to rest inside them again. The hum deepened. The air grew still. Time, for everyone here, finally fell asleep. And I drifted with it, slowly, softly, into the kindest rest a driver could ask for. That's where my story ends tonight. If you'd like to hear more from the road, hit subscribe and rest easy, my friend.